What's up, everybody? Big Monday coming up on Gojo and Golic, so let's get right to it. Marching on without the madness, how is the lack of upsets affecting the men's tournament so far through this March? And Aaron Rodgers came and went in Pittsburgh with no deal done. We'll talk to his former teammate Marshall Newhouse about what the star quarterback can actually do to help Pittsburgh at this point in his career. And listen, it wouldn't be a day that ends in Y if Jimmy Butler weren't having a little fun at the Miami Heat's expense. Some discount coffee for the new team at the expense of the old team. Let's get to it. Start the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here. No Jesse Cofield this morning. Hope she is feeling better, recovering at home, a little illness. But we have a great show for you still today. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and watch us here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the Gojo and Golic YouTube channel. We mentioned Marshall Newhouse going to stop by in hour number 2. We hadn't had him on since the Mondays in the football season. But we figure with all this Aaron Rodgers news, a guy who was a part of that Super Bowl team in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers may be able to shed some light for us there. And then Jordan Cornette, Notre Dame basketball's all-time leader in blocked shots and current NBC Sports analyst and host who's been covering March Madness, doing a great job on a lot of these games, going to walk us through what he saw this weekend. Dad, on a weekend that in the men's side, what we had become used to and what this tournament has been built on has been the madness. It's been double-digit seeds making runs. It's been upsets. It's been Cinderella stories. It's all the stuff that I do in the DraftKings read that we air in the middle of this show in different spots that you guys hear along the way. And yet this year has been devoid of almost any of that. We'll get to maybe the lone buzzer beater we saw of the first weekend. But for the first time since 2007, no team seeded 11th or lower made the Sweet 16. And for the first time ever, we have fewer than 7 conferences represented in the Sweet 16. And when I say fewer, I mean a lot. 4 conferences represented in the Sweet 16 this year in the Big Ten, the SEC, the Big 12, and the ACC. So it has been slow to go. Dad, it's fair to say that we still had one big upset, though, this weekend. And it came in the arena that you tried to tell us about, man. This Gable Steveson upset in the NCAA wrestling tournament by Wyatt Hendrickson from Oklahoma State seems to be not just the biggest upset of this weekend, Dad, but like one of the biggest upsets ever.
Yeah, this is one of the biggest upsets in the NCAAs, without question. I don't know if it's the biggest, but it's one of the biggest. Again, as I mentioned on Friday, I watched a ton of NCAA wrestling. That the championship was Saturday night, flipping between basketball and wrestling. And man, did it deliver. It absolutely delivered. First off, congrats to Penn State. They have now won 4 in a row, and 12 of the last 15 NCAA wrestling championships, which is incredible. Cale Sanderson's their coach. He got there in 2009, started winning in 2011. And like I said, have won 12 of the last 15. They had 2 champions. What shouldn't get lost in all this is Carter Sirachi won his 5th. He's the first ever to win 5 NCAA titles. There have been 4-time winners like Penn State's coach, Cale Sanderson, who was undefeated, 159-0 in college, and won 4 titles. Sirachi, because of the extra year of eligibility, the COVID year, he had an extra year, and he won 5 titles, the first ever to win 5 NCAA titles. So congrats to him. They had one other champ, Mitchell Messenbrink. He won. They had only the second time in NCAA history, 8 of 10 wrestlers on the podium, top 8 All-Americans. So they were dominant yet again. But the match, without question, was Gable Steveson and Wyatt Hendrickson. So a little bit of background. Wyatt Hendrickson went to the Air Force, and he wrestled there for 4 years. But you could not get an extra COVID year if you were in the armed forces. If you went to Army, Navy, Air Force, you couldn't get an extra year. So he transferred to Oklahoma State for his last year so he could get another year wrestling. He was always this big, physical, pinner. He would pin opponents, but he was kind of a not a really refined wrestler. He would get hurt as well. And the coaches really had a plan for him at Oklahoma State. He was really a talent. So he was in his 5th year at Oklahoma State, and he was having a monster year. But Gable Steveson had been the story. Gable Steveson, for those that don't know, won 2 NCAA titles in 21 and 22. He last lost in 2019, the semifinals in the NCAA tournament. That was his last loss. 20, there was no championships, obviously with COVID. He won 21 and 22. He rolled through this year. He came into this match 73 and 0. He had not been taken down this year. And that's important because that's exactly what happened to him. But to set the scene, they bring the 2 wrestlers in, and they do this for all the wrestlers, to their music, and they turn the lights down, and it's like almost like a WWE entrance, right, with the lights down and them running on the mat. And Gable Steveson was out there first in the middle of the mat. And Wyatt Hendrickson, again, from the Air Force, he's in the armed service, he came out with an American flag draped over his shoulder. And as he ran on the mat by Gable Steveson, Gable Steveson is a very confident person. Let me put it that way. Basically a cocky person. And he started smack talking Wyatt Hendrickson on the mat before the match started, as Wyatt was going by him. And boy, go ahead.
Well, didn't a lot of that have to do with, because Gable had been an Olympic gold medalist and he had worn the flag and done that at the Olympics during this break, where, to your point, after those championships, he wins in the Olympics, he goes and tries in the WWE, he goes to Bill's training camp as a defensive lineman, and then comes back for this. So he felt like that was a slight based on his Olympic history, correct?
Yes, and you're right. I left out the Gable Steveson story of he had another year of eligibility, but he left that to go try and go in the WWE. That failed, so he was in training camp for the Buffalo Bills. That failed, so he went back. He had his extra year of wrestling. That's why he's 24 years old. And had another year of wrestling. Yes, that was the supposed slight. He thought, hey, you're wearing it there, whatever it was. So it started off with a little bit of heat. We'll go to the end of the match, and I want to bore everybody with the details who don't watch wrestling. But Gable Steveson is winning 4-2. By the way, these 2 met in the 2021 second round of the NCAA championship. They met when Wyatt was at Air Force. Gable Steveson beat him 18-2. He smoked him. So this was obviously the next time that they wrestled each other. Gable's up 4-2 with 30 seconds to go. Basically 36 seconds to go, 30 seconds area. And Wyatt was down 4-2, and a takedown is worth 3 points. That's important to know. So Wyatt Hendrickson gets the takedown with about 26 seconds to go. I mean, which was stunning. Again, it was the first time Gable Steveson had been taken down this year, and it happened with 30 seconds to go in the NCAA championships, both their final collegiate matches. So Wyatt takes him down, and Wyatt is a very good on-top wrestler when the other wrestler is on the mat. And Gable Steveson tried to get up. He got to his feet one time. Wyatt broke him back down, and the announcers went nuts. The place went nuts. He broke him back down with 13 seconds to go and just rode him out for the 5-4 win. I mean, Wyatt's dad was crying. The coaches were going nuts. Everybody was losing their mind. It was easily, and I don't know where, again, it ranks, but one of the greatest upsets in college wrestling history, just with both the storylines of both wrestlers. It was unreal. And you had to wait till the last match. It was the 10th and final match of the night, but man, was it worth it.
Made it even better because you got a couple of hosses. Like we've talked about this before in boxing, the heavyweights in the sport being lionized. Seeing these guys the size of grizzly bears go out there and do this made it a very, very visually appealing match.
And what was appealing is, again, years ago, now when I wrestled at Notre Dame, they didn't have a weight class. There were guys that were 425 pounds, 380 pounds, and they just kind of moved. Oh, yeah. When I was at Notre Dame, Tab Thacker was a wrestler from North Carolina State. I think he was over 400 pounds.
Tab Thacker.
My brother Bob wrestled in the NCAA championships against a guy from Oklahoma State named Jimmy Jackson, who actually won 2 titles, and he was 380. like 6'7", this monster. But the guys, it's mostly upper body. They don't move a lot. Now the weight class is 285 pounds, and these guys are moving. These guys are shooting. There's action. Just what you said, it was a couple of big guys, but there was a lot of action in it, and they weren't just two big guys, upper body wrestling. So it was really, really exciting. It was very, very cool.
Yeah, it was truly one of the biggest upsets, and by far the biggest upset of the weekend. As we look around the rest of sports and what we got, there was nothing in March Madness that came even close to this. Dan, quite honestly, this is the thing it feels like people were missing from over this weekend. Now, don't get me wrong. We have a lot of really good teams left in March Madness, and I think this is the kind of delicate line we got to toe in talking about this. But what you talked about there is like Leicester City winning a couple of years ago when that happened, the big upset there, and some of the Cinderella stuff we've seen. You got that in wrestling this weekend. You did not get that in March Madness on the men's side. And we're so used to this being what carries the opening weekend in March. The women's side, we've talked about this. And even still, there are very few double-digit upsets. You're generally talking about the top 3 or so seeds on every side being the ones that advance on. But in that side, especially of late, we've been so used to the quality once you get to the later rounds carrying the day. In the men's side, this is the tension that's always been there, Dad, is it's been about weird mascots, upsets, the buzzer beaters that usually run rampant through this tournament. And again, we say only one double-digit seed making it to the next round. The first time since 2007, no 11 or lower seed has made the Sweet 16, and only 4 conferences represented. I'll be curious for Jordan Cornette's take on this, Dad, but for yours too, if this becomes a blip on the radar or if this is the beginning of a trend with name, image, and likeness dollars out there, the transfer portal, a conglomeration of more talent that we maybe have seen, at the very least in conferences, if not just in one school in particular, where you get a bunch of great players that starts to literally price out some of the underdogs that used to be a big part of this tournament, because we're going to have good games left. Like, I don't want that twisted. You've got good teams left. You've got the higher seeds. And so in theory, we're going to get a bunch more competitive games. But Dad, did the first weekend feel a little more hollow for you without the usual bout of close games and Cinderella stories that we've seen?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, without a doubt, it would be interesting. I know there are no perfect sheets left. And really, this would seem like a year where there might be, because it was a lot of chalk. But I think people are so used to not picking chalk in the first 2 rounds because there's always an upset. Like you said, since 2007, first time since there's 11th or lower seed not advancing to the Sweet 16. So that's where you pick the upsets in the first weekend, and then you kind of hope it goes chalk from then on, because for those that have just one sheet, you kind of go chalky through the Sweet 16 all the way to the finals. But it kind of went that way itself. So, yeah, I was a bit surprised. We'll talk about, obviously, Maryland, a 4 seed, almost losing to Colorado State on a buzzer beater. Florida, the number 1 seed, just had a 2-point win over 2-time defending champ UConn. Florida had to made a late run in that game to get that victory. So there were a couple of nail biters, but for the most part, you know what? As you mentioned, just 4 conferences left. The SEC got cut in half. They had 14 teams. They now lead the way with 7. So it's been as chalky as it's been in a while.
7, which is a new record for the most teams from a single conference making it to the Sweet 16. They break the ACC's record of 6, which is unsurprising. I think the year the ACC did that, they got 7 teams in the tournament, so a higher hit rate, but the SEC with 14 teams, Dad, was going to probably be in line for some more records like this.
By the way, in the one sheet that I have turned in, I have, again, a bunch of sheets, so I won't obviously say I picked that or I picked that. But in the one sheet I have 7 of the Elite 8 left. I only have St. John's out, but I have the rest still in. So, but I think a lot of people who go chalky into the second weekend, I think a lot of people in a lot of different contests, it's going to be close at the top.
Yeah, I definitely think so, because it was that kind of year. Usually we're used to dumpster fire memes at this point, and I haven't seen nearly as much of that because everyone's champions are alive. You mentioned the Florida Gators, Walter Clayton Jr. and what he did at the end of that game against UConn, where give Danny Hurley and company credit. Normally we've been talking about Danny Hurley for the fiery outburst. Coached his ass off. That team ran a bunch of great stuff and just missed shots when Walter Clayton Jr. decided to go and take over the game at the end of that one. The veteran point guard factor for this team, Dad. You've got Kentucky making a Sweet 16 in Mark Pope's first years, which I have to imagine the folks in Lexington are thrilled about, considering we also had in the big coaching matchup that everyone talked about, John Calipari punching his ticket in year one at Arkansas. The chicken money paid off. He beats Rick Pitino in St. John's in the coaching matchup that spans decades now in the sport. And so there's still a lot of those interesting subplots. Duke quietly sitting over in the distance looks every bit like the juggernaut that could take this tournament. They've probably looked like the best team that we've seen, at least performance-wise so far. So, Dad, there's all that still hanging in the ether. There's just not a team with a peacock as the mascot, or a team with some, dog-ass white boy who's going to go out here and rain a bunch of threes on you looking like a future accountant, in the workforce. So those things missing, I think, are still going to give way to a really entertaining end to this tournament.
Well, I think it is, because I think the games, you'll get more nail biters, like the Florida game. You mentioned Walter Clayton, 13 of his 23 points in the final 8 minutes. They go on a 14 to 3 run that ends with 40 seconds to go. So they had their work cut out for them. I mean, UConn was winning most of the second half. I mean, Hurley had that team playing well. That would have been the first number one seed getting knocked out had they knocked off Florida. So that was as close as we got to a number one seed losing, and as close as we got to a high seed in Maryland, a 4 seed, almost losing to Colorado State. But they had the incredible buzzer beater by Derek Queen, which was an incredible game. I do think we're going to get great games, but you're right. We're not going to get that weird mascot or that no-name person who you always look for, that person who becomes a star because of the tournament. It seems to be running kind of normal.
Yeah, I feel like the closest that we're going to get to any of that stuff was what we already got with the McNeese manager, Amir Khan, who apparently is now going to follow Will Wade to NC State and become a graduate assistant like he had hoped and dreamed of there. But the student manager, Dad, that had gone on to secure, I saw NIL deals that in total exceeded 6-figure dollar amounts for the man who had taken the country by storm with the boombox coming out before the game. So I wonder if for people that scratches the itch enough. Like, we won't have a Sister Jean this year, but that honestly, this all feels like the parlance of our time. Like, we weren't going to get or deserve a Sister Jean at this point. We got Amir Khan, who immediately went and took his fame and cashed in and capitalized in an era that seems to be all about that in college sports right now.
Yeah, it definitely did. And it was early. That's when people pick the upsets, and then you kind of have the upset teams go by the wayside the second weekend. We just didn't have the upsets on the first weekend, so that was again a bit out of the norm. So that's why I think people's sheets are going to look weird, because they definitely pick some upsets. I definitely pick some upsets. But you rarely have, unless you're an alumni of the team, you rarely have the lower seeded team going too far. And now that's the case. None of them did. So you got a lot of chalk going on.
Well, coming up next, I want to get to the one buzzer beater that we did see from over the weekend and the immediate complaints that followed. Are you a loser if you spend your time caping for traveling publicly after big moments? We'll answer that question next on Gojo and Golic. So we talked about the lack of madness so far this March on the men's side of the bracket. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. here at Gojo and Golic. And Dad, the more I think about it, I think we're going to be fine. And I think the men's tournament, even if this is a trend going forward, may have to reconcile with some things. The women's tournament has been able to subsist on this style a lot more now lately because they've got big stars in their tournament, and the way that the men's tournament just does not have in the way of household names that we've tracked all year, maybe sans Cooper Flagg, who's in line to be the next number 1 overall draft pick. But for the men's side, what I've always thought, and the appeal of the first weekend, is you are buying in bulk. And because you are just assaulted with one game after another as you go through, it does make it a little easier, I think, to absorb a couple in there that aren't as competitive when you're eventually giving way to other games like we saw where, hey, Creighton and Auburn had 16 different lead changes in that game. The buzzer beater we're getting ready to talk about between Maryland and Colorado State had 15 lead changes in that game. So there were still exciting games. The UConn-Florida game that we talked about, it just didn't net you the upsets. But now going forward, as there are comparatively fewer games, this is what we've always talked about. Sometimes the danger in the tournament with the upsets is eventually Cinderella turns back into a pumpkin once you get to these second and third weekends, once you get deeper into the tournament and the talent rises. And so maybe with more of the upper ranked teams and more of the talent late in the tournament, Dad, we're just kind of mortgaging that early weekend to get some better games down the home stretch here and some more exciting games in the later rounds.
Yeah, no, listen, I agree. You look at the matchups like on the right side, Duke against Arizona, BYU, Alabama, Houston, Purdue, Kentucky, Tennessee. I mean, those are blue bloods, right? Who are facing off in the Sweet 16. I mean, you're right. We hopefully will get, now again, if you're a fan of the team, you want to see a blowout. You'd rather not have a close game or us talking about a buzzer beater unless your team is on the right side of it. But, from a fan's perspective, they should be more competitive games.
Speaking of competitive, man, the guy I feel for the most this morning is Jalen Lake. Because when we talk about potential hero figures in March, Jalen Lake was on the cusp of that for Colorado State. He hits the three-pointer with 6 seconds left to put Colorado State up 71-72 in this game with a chance to do what we had been asking for. Give us a buzzer beater and a compelling game to have an upset go on to the next round here. Sorry to Scott Van Pelt's Maryland Terrapins, but the Crab Five, unfortunately, had the last laugh on this one. And, Dad, for Maryland, I thought this is, again, one of those cool hero-building moments that we heard about from Kevin Willard after the game. But he said they call that timeout with just under 4 seconds left. And he basically asked the guys, who wants the ball? And freshman Derek Queen, the 6'10 stud, raises his hand and said, I want the MFing ball. Goes and hits the runner, and then has to listen to a bunch of people whine and complain about traveling calls. Now, Dad, listen, traveling in this case especially, this is kind of like a holding call to me to where, if you slow it down and go over it with a fine-tooth comb, could you probably call traveling on this play? Sure, but is it egregious enough in the scheme of modern basketball to where I'm going to waste time in a rule of cool moment worrying about that? Absolutely the hell not.
No, it's like the gather step. Was that a step or was that just gathering the ball and then he took 2 steps? I'm glad they didn't call it. I listen, I don't know the intricacies enough, especially of what they call and don't call of traveling to have that called. So I was fine with a no call there. Derek Queen led the team with 17 points. Like you said, the freshman wanted the ball. It was what a hell of he gets the ball and drives left. What a high banker that was off the glass. I mean, what a shot that was, as you mentioned, they call it the starting five for Maryland, as Mike referenced, the Crab Five. By the way, going forward, they're going to need more help from their bench, right? All 5 starters were in double figures. Their bench scored 2 points. I mean, you're going to need a little more from your bench if you're going to make a run in this thing to put everything on your starting 5. But it was an incredible, and you're right. You feel Jalen Lake for Colorado State so calmly nailed that 3 with 6 seconds to go. It was a smooth stroke, a smooth shot. And then Maryland takes the ball out with 6 seconds, gets across half court and calls a timeout with 3.6 to go. and the winning play is like Kevin Willard is drawn up for Queen, and it's history. But yeah, we only got one of those. And boy, it was a beauty though.
I appreciate Colorado State head coach Nico Medved after the game addressing that final play and the idea that it could have been called a travel in the way he did. Here he was after this gut punch of a loss to his team. I thought absorbing this in a really, really impressive way.
Coach, I think there was a time and a day when that would have been a travel at the end of the game. I wonder how you feel about that.
I haven't seen the video yet. It's going to be hard for me to watch. I'm sure I will at some point. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But it doesn't matter. They didn't call one. So, whether it was or wasn't, they didn't call one, and they never go back and change the call. But again, he made a really difficult shot, guys. I mean, he made a really, really difficult shot.
That's the right way to do it. Losers sit and complain about officiating in the midst of the postgame. A guy who I would say, listen, Colorado State was rolling into the tournament hot. They were a lot of people's trendy double-digit seed pick to go and make a run kind of like they did and could have absolutely ended in a Sweet 16. But stand up there and go, yeah, the dude just made a great play, and that's how stuff goes sometime, is the absolute right winner's way to go about losing.
Yep. Yeah, like you said, you can't go back and change it. So no, it is like a holding call. If there was a play that looked like holding, but it wasn't called, and there's a touchdown pass, so be it. You can't go back and you can't undo it. So yeah, I was impressed with the way he handled that, because there could be a lot of frustration. Maybe there were some players in the locker room who weren't as happy about it. I don't know. I know I wouldn't be if you thought it was a travel, but. Again, it was open for interpretation, I guess. And now Maryland gets Florida, the number 1 seed.
That's the kind of stuff you spend time at the reunion complaining about. When you and the guys from that team are back having a couple of pops on campus years later after graduation, and you want to do what everyone else does and talk about what could have been, you do it there. You don't do it in front of the microphone post-game after you just spilled your guts out there and played a really good game. So I thought well handled there. We will see if our buddy Jordan Cornette agrees. Again, coming up in about 10 minutes here on the show, NBC sports analyst Jordan Cornette going to join us and talk about what he saw from March Madness. Again, a guy who lived it, a guy who went through it at the highest level at college basketball, going to stop by and help us unpack some of what we've seen. Again, I think everything's going to be fine with this tournament here, and the lack of upsets the first weekend is actually going to help produce better quality overall through the rest of the tournament. I have come around over the years. I used to, especially when I first started doing this and felt like being, young and contrarian on everything, I used to kind of rail against the upsets in the early rounds because I thought it would give away to some worse matchups later on. There's merit to all of it. There's certainly merit in the underdog stories. It's a huge part of what we love about sports, but I think this tournament is going to be just fine without it. We would have been just fine, Dad, without mentioning Aaron Rodgers' name again this offseason without any news. But unfortunately, that's exactly where we're at this point from over the weekend. So while we were all sitting and fusing with our couch watching March Madness, Aaron Rodgers got up off of his and walked into the Steelers facility over on Carson Street and apparently had about a 6-hour sit-down meeting with the Pittsburgh Steelers brass. Everyone involved characterized it as pretty good, but Dad, ultimately it does not end in any contract between the two right now. We have heard Aaron Rodgers is in no rush over and over again in this process. But were you surprised at all that him getting into the building didn't net them the contract that usually comes from these in-person visits?
Well, it just seems this is all on Aaron Rodgers, because it seems obviously Pittsburgh wants him. The Giants went the way of Jameis Winston, which we'll get into. So it's really Pittsburgh that's left. And here's the thing to me, Mike. I think they want Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, they brought him in. But I think they're not going to put any pressure on Aaron, because I believe they're going to be they think they're going to be fine if they don't get Aaron with Mason Rudolph. I think Mason Rudolph's going to be the guy. He was in Pittsburgh. Now he's not there. Listen, he's certainly not the long-term answer, but Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to be the long-term answer either. So I think having Mason Rudolph, I think they feel like not our top choice, but something that we're going to live with, because outside of bringing Russell Wilson back, You know, if Aaron doesn't sign with Pittsburgh, there's really nobody left.
If you're a Steelers fan, I'm genuinely curious at this point. Would you rather have Mason Rudolph or Aaron Rodgers? Knowing everything that comes with Aaron Rodgers, but also understanding of the quarterback options we just mentioned. Dan, I think Aaron Rodgers is the only one that could move the needle in a way that would move me if I was someone rooting for that team. Because at the very least, he represents something you haven't had before and a ceiling, at least in terms of competence, you haven't touched in a while at that spot. Because I don't know. Mason Rudolph, and I hear Cam Hayward, 100% is a guy on that team. This is the difference of inside and outside that locker room, where Cam Hayward comes out and obviously says he's not going to bend over backwards in recruiting Aaron Rodgers. You either want to be a Steeler or you don't. Hey, Mason Rudolph's been here before. This locker room is behind him. I get all that stuff from his standpoint because the guys in the locker room should believe we can win with who we've got because we're a team with that kind of pedigree and we're a team that's got great coaching and all the things the Steelers have to sell. But if you root for that football team, I feel like if they trotted Mason Rudolph out there again, I'd go insane if I was a fan of that team. Just feeling like you're on this conveyor belt that keeps getting you back to the same place. Where at the very least, Dad, Aaron Rodgers, we talked about the numbers last year, pedestrian by his standards, coming off of an Achilles injury, but was like the third best Jets quarterback season of all time and would certainly represent some improvement over what we've seen as of late in Pittsburgh, would it not?
Yeah, obviously some of his other rankings were 25th and lower. The major rankings were certainly pretty good from a Jet standpoint. Do you find it odd that the two biggest names of all the quarterback musical chairs that went around, Geno or Sam Darnold going to Seattle, Geno going to Vegas, Jameis going to the Giants, Mason Rudolph going to Pittsburgh, Kenny Pickett getting traded to Cleveland, all these quarterbacks changing positions, changing teams. Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson do not have a team. Now, Aaron Rodgers, this is on Aaron Rodgers because he's decided not to make a decision yet. He probably could have been on the Steelers or on the Giants a week or so ago, but he chose not to make a decision. Russell Wilson is just kind of out there, right? I mean, the two biggest names, Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, don't have jobs yet. Again, mostly on Aaron Rodgers.
Sure, and you know, listen, they're the biggest names and the one we know, but they're shells of their former self in terms of the overall play that we're used to from those guys. It's not like you're getting the prime version of either at this point. And so, I can get why they're at the back of the line. Russell Wilson last year had the bump after he was inserted for Fields that a lot of people weren't sure would come, and Mike Tomlin got to take the victory for lap, and the passing offense did improve some, but that's still a guy where you've got to kind of run a very specific offense and a very conservative offense in order to make it happen there. And Aaron Rodgers, as you pointed out, to his own choosing. We did get Jameis Winston over the weekend, though. The Big Apple now gets a dose of Jameis Winston. That still is probably going to have the Giants hunting for young quarterback at the top of the draft. I don't think this is like, oh, yeah, you're going to go and pay $8 million over 2 years for your starting quarterback or whatever the number ended up being at 2 years, $8 million for Jameis Winston. But at the very least, Dad, it's interesting. And Jameis Winston as the chaos agent, as that sort of like cowboy rolling into town for all these teams that are looking for quarterbacks and not quite sure of what they have, to me is an insurance policy for fun in New York that's been desperately missing and desperately needed by that team for a few years now.
Yeah, because I agree. I still think they'll go for a young quarterback, and Malik Neighbors will get his wish, right? He wished for his team to get a young quarterback and a veteran. So they got the veteran part out of the way. Now they pick number 3. Will they make a move to 1 for Cam Ward, or will Tennessee stay there and take him? Will they take Shedeur Sanders at 3? Will they trade back and still try and get him? But yeah, I still believe they're going to be in it for a young quarterback.
Yeah, I would say that's the right move. And listen, Malik Neighbors and Jameis Winston, I don't feel like he had a receiver anywhere close to that last year when he threw a bunch of those interceptions over a 3-game span. So Giants fans, take solace in this. Maybe Malik Neighbors can be enough with a veteran like Jameis Winston to go and pull you out of some of this hell that you've been in as you get your rookie quarterback ready. Coming up next, we will get you guys ready for the Sweet 16 in college basketball. Jordan Cornette going to stop by with us next on Gojo and Golic. All right, welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. Coming up in about 20 minutes here, our buddy Marshall Newhouse going to join us, as he did a lot of Mondays during the football season, to break down a little what we have leading up to the NFL draft. But before we get to that, the madness rolled along this weekend, maybe a little bit muted on the madness, but the march does continue. And to help us unpack all of that, we bring in Notre Dame men's basketball's all-time leader in block shots, our friend and NBC Sports host and analyst doing a great job covering March Madness, Jordan Cornette, kind enough to hop in with us here. Jordan, good morning, man. How you doing?
Guys, it's good to be on with Notre Dame's first family again, guys. How we feeling?
Always good to have you here, brother. It's nice when we can get a little bit more Irish here. While our ladies roll along on the women's side and keep doing their thing, we'll bring the good vibes on that end here. But, Jordan, we mentioned it's kind of been the story all morning through March Madness on the men's side here. Everyone talking about no 11 seed or lower in the Sweet 16 for the first time in a long time here. Only 4 conferences represented in the Sweet 16. Is this a blip in the radar? Is this a trend based on name, image, and likeness in the transfer portal, kind of putting more dollars in the hands of these big programs? What did you make of this first weekend overall?
Well, Junior, I definitely think that's a part of it. The fact that these NIL packages, you just got more elite talent, and that there's truly a separation for right now between the haves and the have-nots. But the gripes, I think, with everyone looking into the second weekend and saying there's no Cinderellas, our sport in college basketball is the only one where you inject the casuals in with this type of narrative. And it's like, wait a second. In college football, in the NFL plus, don't you want to see the best teams in the highest level competition as you go into trying to fight for a championship? And to me, as somebody who's furthest thing from a casual, who it's his profession and covers it, I am juiced to see the fact that we've got the best teams in the best regions, representing the best conferences, the powerful conferences with NBA talent, trying to figure this thing out for a championship and cutting down the nets. I think we're primed for one of the best tournaments in a long time for that very fact.
Yeah, you look at the lowest seed is Arkansas and John Calipari's team. Oh, by the way, he joins Lon Kruger as the only coach to take 4 schools to the Sweet 16. So that's pretty impressive. Speaking of impressive, who has impressed you the most so far in the first weekend?
You know, it would definitely have to, by the way, Big Mike, I would say Cal's group, you could call them a Cinderella with everything they faced starting 0-5. I mean, that is probably your best version of a Cinderella. And I was there with Westwood One Radio doing that Arkansas run in the first weekend, and talk about emotion with his family, his daughter Megan, his wife Ellen. literally in our post-game interview, were full of tears, crying, embracing him. You would have thought they won a national championship. Coach Cal downplayed it, said it wasn't about anything with Kentucky or Patino, but we ain't stupid. Like, it obviously was driven and motivated by that, no question. I would say Arkansas certainly impressed me because of their ceiling being recognized and who they can be. This group was without Boogie Flan for 15 games this season. He's a lottery pick. He's a five-star guy. He's a shot creator, ball dominant handler who was figuring out the college game very early, and then he was gone. He started to get his feet wet, but they didn't need to rely on him very much. Adu Thiero is their leading scorer, one of the best two-way players in the game, and also great on the backboard, and he's lost for the season. And yet this team found a new identity by getting just an eighth guy on the roster with Boogie Flan. Jonas Adu's taking his game to another level. That was high-level basketball. But the team I would have to say that's impressed everybody the most is Duke, just with the margin in which they've handled their first two opponents. Never mind, the first round win, but that second round win and how they looked. This Duke team against Baylor was dominant. Duke plays – look, they've got talent. There's no question about it. It's Duke. But Coach Shire has them so well coached. They always locate a block out. They always make the extra pass. They always take the highest quality shot. It would have to be Duke.
I will say I've also enjoyed, thanks to Pat Beverly, the renaissance of John Shire's playing career coming back into the discourse with everyone here. The White Mike story certainly added some nice color to the tournament here in that regard. You mentioned Arkansas, though, and Cal, Jordan. I'm sure there were a lot of folks with an eye from Lexington watching and seeing how that worked out until their own future got sure. And Kentucky punches their ticket to the Sweet 16, and Mark Pope's year one for him and for this program to pull that off in the first season, knowing what brought Kentucky to this point at the end of John Calipari's career. How huge was that for them going forward?
Massive. And I'm sure the Cal camp was like, dang, I thought this was going to be only about us this weekend. Look, Coach Pope is much like Kevin Young at BYU in terms of their NBA ideals. A lot of different actions, a lot of different counters, like to space you out, really get up in you and guard, try and play with pace. But yeah, this is a Kentucky team. In facing Illinois in that matchup, I kind of felt like they were similar teams in one regard. How well can they shoot the three? If they get going from the three, that can really carry a team. And Kentucky prevailed on that side of it. Illinois couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. But I look at this Kentucky team, and I still think they're in stages of growth. I look, Kentucky, I'm trying to look at my bracket here and see where they go. They've got Tennessee, and I believe Tennessee gets to the Final Four. Tennessee is a masterclass defensively in what they do and make you play left-handed. But Kentucky has beaten Tennessee twice. Now, for pro Kentucky people, I'd say, what's a third time? But to me, the cynic says, good luck doing that a third time against Rick Barnes and that group and Zakai Ziegler. So I think that goes Tennessee's way. And I can actually say my bracket hasn't been that bad this year, where I'm in that top tier. So there is some confidence in my picks right now.
So the four number one still in. Auburn plays Michigan, Florida plays Maryland, Duke plays Arizona, and Houston plays Purdue. If a number one is going to fall in this round, who would it be?
Oof. I'd have to say Auburn. Just because Michigan has that front line of versatility that can stretch out, bring Broom outside of the paint, doesn't keep him down there as a rim protector and rebounder. Those guys, if they shoot the ball well. Now, obviously, everybody's got to make shots. But Michigan, if they get in love with the three-point shot and it's not falling, it's a domino effect for this group. They went on a 3-4 game losing skid because they stopped defending when the ball wasn't going in the basket. And you'll see other teams like Tennessee, they don't worry about that. St. John's up until this past weekend was a team that didn't worry about that. The teams that fall in love with the offense and let it dictate everything else are vulnerable. But I just like Trey Donaldson looking at his old squad and saying, let's go get it here. I just think some of that stuff in terms of motivating factors with their ability for guys like Barnett to get out and transition, but ultimately Golden and Wolf, I think, can decide this one because of their unique personnel, and they're hard to match up with. And I think Dusty May is a hell of a coach. So that pick and roll sequence with those guys, sprinkle in a little bit of Donaldson, I like Michigan to advance.
All right, so we got the Wolverines moving on. Let's talk about the one buzzer beater that we did sort of have from this weekend. The Maryland-Colorado State game was incredible. You thought Jalen Lake was etching his name in the history books, and then Derek Queen and Maryland come through with the game winner there. Where are you at on this travel discourse around the final play that we saw on this, Jordan?
Well, look, as a neutral guy, I don't think you're ever going to see that whistle. Like, you're just never going to see that called. And I know everyone says, well, the moment in the game shouldn't dictate what a call is. And I get that, but it's a bang-bang play. It had the feel of like an NBA move, and the travel is always kind of a hit or miss in those kind of plays. I think you don't call it. I'm totally fine with it not being called. That being said, as three athletes sitting here chopping it up, can you imagine a guy who's 18 years old in your huddle just saying, this is mine. This is mine. And you got seniors in there and they go, it's his. Like, let him go take it. I think that's incredible that this kid goes, it's my MF and ball, and the four other guys who are studs, because Maryland might have the best starting five in college basketball, and all four of them defer to him, and he takes it, and he gets a bucket. And the degree of difficulty is a 10. I think that was the coolest moment of the tournament. Shout out to Aura, at McNeese, but I still think, like, Derek Queen said, give me the basketball with all the tradition at Maryland, with their coach maybe coaching his last games, because who knows if he's going to leave with how unhappy he is with the athletic department there in NIL. And to deliver that moment, I was wowed. I mean, I was wired after the end of that game.
I mean, and a lot of times a guy doesn't even need to say it. You kind of know who wants the ball. In this case, I don't know if that was the case, if he had to declare. And the coach even said, I didn't know that was his first game-winning shot. I don't know if I would have given it to him had it not been. But that is really impressive. And can that spark a team? I mean, so because people will say, oh, they had needed a buzzer beater to beat a 12 seed in Colorado State. Now they're going up against a number 1 seed, and they struggle against a 12 seed. But how could this spark them?
It can really spark them confidence-wise, because now this group says, well, why not us? So you feel like you're playing with house money at that point, right? Like Jalen Lake for Colorado State, I said, hit the biggest shot in Colorado State history until he didn't. And then Derek Queen makes that play, and it's all for naught. And so when you have a ball like that go in, you go in with confidence being like, hey, we're supposed to be done. And they're going to need that confidence because of the team that they're playing against. This Florida team has depth. They grind on you. I made the bold statement and almost ate my words, and it ultimately ended up being ironic in who Florida usurped. Usurped's not the right word because they're the higher seed. Beat in UConn because of what UConn had been the last 2 years, that dominant team. And I said this year, I think Florida, with how good they are, could have beaten either of those UConn teams in the tournament last year. That's how good this Florida team is. Now, credit UConn. They limit turnovers, took away transition, neutralized the backboard, made shots, but Florida still won. Florida's going to grind that crab five that gets no bench production.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The crab five were all in double figures. The bench had 2 points. I mean, that could turn out to be the Achilles heel, I would imagine, right?
No question. And it might not even be conditioning, just being tired. Because come on, these guys are 18 to 22. They got a 4-day break. Yeah. Where it's going to rear its ugly head is those bigs hand locked in. How they're going to get into you. They're going to get you in foul trouble. And that's the problem when you're playing one of those guys in the crab five. Most notably, Derek Queen has 3 fouls in the first half. Then you're in trouble because they don't like to use their bench. They can't use their bench. There's nobody that can produce offensively for that group when Coach Willard looks down the line if somebody gets in foul trouble. So this is a really bad matchup for them, and we haven't had those Cinderella moments, but maybe these lesser teams that are not as superior as a Florida, we might get those moments. Like if Maryland beats Florida, that's a Cinderella moment to those that know. Like that would be a crazy upset. So we still got some of that opportunity, but I just think Florida is so dominant. They were really challenged by UConn, which I think is better off for the Gators, and I still like them to win this whole thing.
Well, as you put it, no disrespect to Aura, but the Crab Five, the best nickname remaining in the tournament, and probably was going in even up against Aura early on in this tournament run here. Jordan, only a couple of minutes left, and I just wanted to get to this. Obviously, they're not still dancing, and this coaching change happening for a reason, but I wanted to take the temperature on Texas. It sounds like the reports that they're zeroing in on Xavier head coach Sean Miller. As someone who knows Sean and knows what he's done for that program really well, what would Texas be getting in him as a head coach, and would he be able to help turn the tides around there?
A brilliant offensive mind, one of the real great coaches in our game. I truly believe he's a top 10 to 15 coach who's got a proven record of winning, just hasn't won the big one, but is a consistent winner. What's fascinating to me, as you mentioned, I have a relationship with him. I had dinner, this might have been 2 years ago, with Sean Miller before the Crosstown Shootout as a native Cincinnatian. It's the biggest matchup between Xavier and Cincinnati, two rivals in my hometown. I was doing the broadcast with the former network I used to work for, that place, and I'm getting ready to do the game. And the night before, I had dinner with Sean, his wife, and a couple other people. And I felt comfortable asking him. I said, "Hey, Coach, everybody's riding high that you're back here in Cincinnati, but would you ever take one of those big boy gigs? Because Xavier is a big boy gig, but one of the massive gigs, like in Arizona, like in Texas." And he looked me dead in the eyes and goes, "Jordan, it's such a grind. It took years off my life. I did it. I loved it. But, man, I just can never go back to that level of just everything that comes with it because it grinds on you as a human." And I believed him. I truly, if he said this Xavier stop will be my last stop. Now, this isn't to say he's full of it. What it tells me is he must have got to a place with Xavier in this new landscape with NIL and said, "Hey, guys, look at St. John's. Look at what Mike Rapoli Body Armor is doing there. Look at what Villanova's promising whoever comes in. We've got to get our number to here. And if we don't, then we're not going to be able to do this thing." And I think ultimately he had to leave for Texas because of it.
It really is a lot of changing times, and watching that landscape change is going to be fascinating to monitor going forward as we wrap our heads around this across every sport. Check him out on NBC, doing a phenomenal job on the calls on Westwood One during March Madness. The great Jordan Cornette. Brother, always great catching up with you, man. Enjoy the rest of the tournament run, all right?
Love the Golics. Best for the rest of the family, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, man.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. I know we've had a lot of focus on the men's bracket so far, but we got to go show some love to a first in the NCAA tournament. Lauren Betts, the UCLA star, had a night for the ages against Richmond. She put up 30 points and 14 rebounds in a game, making her the first UCLA player to score 30 and get at least 10 boards in an NCAA tournament game. It also marked her first 30 and 10 game in her career as the Bruins cruised to an 84-67 win. The 6'8" Betts had a great second half to keep the tournament hopes alive. But coming up next, we'll tell you why she and everyone else, including Marshall Newhouse, better quake in fear in front of the almighty Notre Dame women's basketball team. Next on Gojo and Golic. All right, hour number 2 here on Gojo and Golic, complete with some hate and ass Jimmy Butler that we'll get to in a little bit, a little recap, some NBA action. I went over to the Intuit Dome and saw the Clippers and the Oklahoma City Thunder play a pretty entertaining one last night. OKC gets the win and continues to just put distance between themselves and the Western Conference. But Intuit Dome, Bomber did some things over there. That's a fun place to see a basketball game. And that Clippers team, when healthy, looks like they'll be a major factor in the Western Conference playoffs. But right now, before we get to all of that, it is Monday around here. It's our last Monday with the show since we will be turning the lights off here with this version of the show with DraftKings at the end of the week. So it felt only right to bring in our buddy, former NFL veteran offensive lineman, Super Bowl champion Marshall Newhouse, to hang out with us as he did Mondays during the football season. The timing just couldn't be worse for us interpersonally because in March Madness on the women's side, Notre Dame and TCU are getting ready to throw down this next weekend in the Sweet 16. So, Marshall, good morning. Welcome to TCU Hate Week. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Hate you as well. Hate you back. Yeah, this is officially a tense friendship for about a week now. So we're going to have to just get through it and figure things out. And then when TCU eventually wins, we'll have a beer and we'll settle it like men.
Oh, wow. Hey, listen, all I got to say is Notre Dame is playing like when they were number one in the country. right now. They got it going on. But listen, I know TCU is playing well, and I know TCU beat Notre Dame way back in November. It almost feels
2
like
years
last
ago.
year because
Yeah.
it was last year.
Listen, senior, I get doing the timeline thing, and you can, teams can change from game to game, especially that far in the season. But that was a pretty convincing win. So what has Notre Dame changed since then? TCU's got to do it again. Do it again in neutral territory. I like our lady, Haley Van Lith, Sedona Prince, Madison Connor, Mark Campbell. Coach Mark Campbell has got them playing just excellent basketball. They're on an unprecedented run, and I think they feel that. They're channeling the energy of that program. So it'll be a good one regardless.
By the way, there's the Sweet 16 is set in the men's, Mike, and there's 8 of the 16 in the women's. The other 8 will be decided tonight. But already we have 3 crossovers: Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Duke. On the men's and women's side have reached the Sweet 16.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of the correlation there between the success on both sides, though. So it'll be interesting one to keep an eye on. As your point, we still got to stock the rest of the Sweet 16 on the women's side. Shout out to Haley Van Lith, by the way, that got her little revenge game against her former team in Louisville. Decidedly a good thumping in that one. So it'll be interesting. I mean, this Notre Dame team has plenty of experience playing against Haley at her prior stop. You mentioned they're playing some great ball right now. The Notre Dame women avoiding the Olivia Miles injury that looked like maybe popped up in that first round game, all helped get us to now a very compelling matchup in the Sweet 16 there. So we'll revisit that on the other side and all remain dear friends. Marshall, in the meantime, as we've gone through March Madness and gone through NFL free agency, I felt like the one blip on the radar from this past weekend was Aaron Rodgers finally walked in the door in Pittsburgh, which in the saga that this has become this offseason feels noteworthy. Now, he walked out of it, and there was still no deal done between the two teams, and he seems content on taking his time. We were talking about this earlier, though, Marshall. Does he still represent like a significant enough upgrade to Pittsburgh to where if you're a fan, you've got to bank emotional capital into this? Because I don't know about you as a fan. I don't know how I'd stomach going back into a season with Mason Rudolph as my quarterback, even with everything that Aaron Rodgers represents off the field. Does this still look like overwhelmingly the best football option for them?
This whole saga has reminded me that every time, the salary cap goes up and a new crop of quarterbacks breaks the new high salary annual per year barrier, some people have kind of a balked reaction to that. But the reality is there are not 32 good or great quarterbacks on this planet right now. And so as long as that's true, Aaron Rodgers could be 46. And if enough young guys haven't figured it out, and he's still healthy, someone's going to let him walk in the door and see what's what. And so that's what's happening right now. Last year, Pittsburgh was playing the Justin Fields game where they let him run for his life, and he won them some games, and they could have a decent ground game. And then they switched to Russell Wilson, and for like 2 or 3 weeks, they might contend with somebody in a wild card game, maybe. But now they're at a place where listen, the crux of the Mike Tomlin way of always having a winning record is you're never in position to get another game-changing quarterback. And so this is the world that they live in now. And so Aaron Rodgers, I think, is enough of even when he's posing on the beach with a blanket over his back, looking longingly at the ocean waves in the horizon, he still represents enough of an upgrade to let them go win because, usually if TJ Watt's healthy, if they tend to get things done on the defensive end, they're not a team that you want to see if they have confident quarterback play. That's just the biggest if for them at all. And so, yes, Aaron Rodgers is someone they're considering seriously. Ultimately, Mike Tomlin has to decide if the way Aaron Rodgers is now, a lot of quotations, a lot of context, can fit into that locker room and help them win on basically a one-year deal.
So with Jameis signing with the Giants, the last empty chair for a starting quarterback in the NFL is Pittsburgh. They bring him in for a visit. He leaves with no deal signed. It seems from Aaron's side, it's either start for Pittsburgh or retire. Which side do you think it ends up on?
If I think he ultimately plays for Pittsburgh just because there's a match there. If they, again, Mason Rudolph being their best option, we start to look at Mike Tomlin differently if that's all he has. He's had at least something, and they figured it out. But if they don't have someone competent and they don't have a plan to steal somebody in the draft, in a very light QB draft, to say the least, then their team is in peril, legit peril. And I think Aaron Rodgers wants one more crack at showing people what he can do, because this end of his career with the Jets tenure is sour, man. It's just a rough way to end a Hall of Fame career, and people won't forget it. And I know him as a competitor won't forget it. And so he's looking for a way to end with a better taste in his mouth.
While Aaron Rodgers looks for that, you mentioned younger quarterbacks figuring it out. I want to look at this sophomore class of quarterbacks. They're highlighted by what you just mentioned, the fact that this year's rookie class does not seem to have the same firepower that they did. So looking at the second-year guys, Marshall, and the teams as we just went through free agency, who do you think did the most to help their guy, their second-year signal caller this offseason, between the Bears, the Commanders, the Patriots, and even on down to J.J. McCarthy, who's getting set to take over, Bo Nix or Michael Penix? Who got the most boost from the way their team attacked free agency?
Well, listen, I commend those teams for actually doing something, and it seems like the lowest bar possible, but they were active and they were proactive in things to bolster around these quarterbacks. And to me, the biggest one is just having Ben Johnson and then solidifying the inside of the line for Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. On top of that added sense of protection and security for him, this Ben Johnson offense, he got used to what it was like to have a big, bruising, athletic offensive line in Detroit. And he's like, I don't want to exist in a world without that. And so at the very least, I'm going to get Joe Thuney. We're signing a new center. We're signing a new guard. We'll let them figure it out, and I'll design an offense that suits them and suits Caleb. And so I think they did the most. But listen, I think the Patriots are going to make a really big leap. And I think the Commanders did a lot. The Commanders made more noise. I don't know if they'll have as much impact. Debo is such a unique piece. I think Cliff Kingsbury will find out a lot ways to deal with him. And I hope that, leads to a Jaden Daniels lack of a sophomore slump. They have a lot of weapons still, but for me, it's still Chicago, because Caleb was running for his life. We didn't get to see what he could really be until the end of the season. And there are flashes where you're like, okay, we get it. Now let's do this for an entire season. And so them in a camp, Ben Johnson talked about he and the center needing to see the game the same way. I think that was awesome. He's more of a zone center. And so I think you're going to see a lot of rollouts, a lot of boots, a lot of things that Ben Johnson liked to do with Jared Goff in Detroit. And I think it'll only benefit Caleb. It'll take reads off of his plate. It'll keep him in a more structured environment. And then when you need to make him and let him create, then he can go create to convert third downs, touchdowns, red zone.
Going back a little bit in free agency, DeMarcus Lawrence, who spent his whole, 10, 11-year career in Dallas, signs with Seattle, takes a parting shot at the Cowboys, saying they're never going to win a Super Bowl. He and Micah Parsons go back and forth. Bottom line is DeMarcus Lawrence right about the Dallas Cowboys?
Listen, I love to exist in a world where a lot of things can be true, and all things involved in this scenario can be true. DeMarcus Lawrence has fallen off. He's an older pass rusher. I think he's still great against the run. He is still a stout defensive end. And then ultimately, I think there are questions about not Micah Parsons' ability, but his focus with having the podcast during the season. And then, yes, what we know to be true about the Dallas Cowboys is they have chronically underachieved for 20 years. And so until things change, a la Jerry Jones is not the head decision maker, the head, disruptor when it comes to speaking for the head coach and being the first guy that gets interviewed and dealing with free agency the way they deal with free agency. All these things can be true. The Cowboys will still be the Cowboys. Dak, I think, will have a nice season, but do they have enough? Does anyone think they're going to challenge and make a playoff run again? No, they don't. And so all these things, I think, can coexist in a really disappointing way if you're a Cowboys fan.
Oh, God. Disappointment in Cowboys fans. Unfortunately, those have gone hand in hand. Hell,
It
Dallas
sells
sports
still.
fandom right now. Yes, exactly. God help them all. Pray for the Dallas fan in your life. Marshall, let's stay in the NFC East, though. We mentioned a little bit before Jameis Winston was the signing over the weekend. The New York Giants bring him in and sign him to a 2-year, $8 million deal. If you're the New York Giants and if you're a player on that team, a veteran on that roster, are you still rooting for them to do whatever they need to get one of the top 2 quarterbacks in this draft in Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, even if it takes giving up some assets to get up to that 1 or 2 spot?
Yeah, I'm a veteran. Yeah, listen, no one likes to lose. And if you're a veteran on that team, you feel the same heat or similar heat. You feel the residual heat from Joe Sheen and Brian Daboll because their seat is hot. And so they signed Jameis. We know Jameis is not a long-term answer. So does that mean they think they compete with Jameis for the full season? Probably not. Does that give them a chance to go get a young guy and make a splash? That's usually what this is. It feels that way. And if they put another stinker on the board, not only is Joe Sheen and Brian Daboll's job in jeopardy, if you're a veteran who was signed by them, or if you're a guy who was drafted by them, you guys know when GMs change, that was his guy. If a new guy comes in, that's not my guy. They have no loyalty to you outside of contractual constraints. And even then, they find ways to move you. And so if you're a veteran, you're absolutely rooting for them to make the best decision available. If that means Cam Ward's not there and you take the second guy, or if you jump and go get Cam Ward if he's your guy, if that makes you competitive this year, you're all for it because you're running out of time and you can feel that pressure for sure in that building.
Yeah, that pressure is going to produce an interesting decision one way or the other from the New York Giants as they do stare down the barrel and the cliff that comes with what might happen this season and that guillotine kind of hanging over their head. So going to be fascinating to watch. Not nearly as fascinating as Notre Dame and TCU in the Sweet 16. Marshall, always appreciate the time, brother. Enjoy this week. We will all look forward to the game and then being able to go back to be friends after the game here. Thanks, brother.
Appreciate it, guys. Watch women's hoops, please.
Oh,
yes, absolutely. Everyone watches women's sports, and this year's tournament, building off the backs of the ones recently dead, certainly no stranger to more great play and big star names. So absolutely right here. Got to support the ladies because they deserve it.
Yeah, without a doubt. As we said, there are 8 spots filled in the Sweet 16. A couple of matchups set. Number 1 overall, UCLA will take on Ole Miss, and Notre Dame takes on TCU. The rest of the matchups have yet to be set. That'll be set after tonight. But yeah, nice matchup in the Notre Dame women. They're again playing like they were when they were number 1. They're playing some great ball, but so is TCU. I mean, winning the Big 12 and Haley Van Lith and what she has done, Big 12 Player of the Year, really helping that team.
Yeah, we had Neil Ivey on the show last week in the lead up to it, and she harped on defense. And man, her ladies have responded in the early going. That defensive effort against Michigan was stifling to start that game. And we know it starts with Hannah Hidalgo, the player of the year in the ACC and the defensive player of the year. But Sonia Citron, the rest of that group, showed up and showed out in a big way as the Lady Irish roll along. All right, welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Thank you to Jordan Cornette, Marshall Newhouse for stopping by the show. If you missed any of those conversations, the podcast, the YouTube page, you know the places to find them. They will be there, doing a great job talking about the tournament, NFL free agency. Dad, was a busy sports weekend out here for your boy in Los Angeles. I got to hit a triple crown. Now, no football, obviously, because we're out of season, but I managed to go catch one of the CONCACAF semifinal games at SoFi where the U.S. started their pretty brutal slide this weekend, losing to Panama in the semifinals and then Canada in the third place matchup last night. Saw a Kings game where, Dad, there's nothing funnier than the environment that I saw this Kings game in. So I'm sure you can appreciate this as someone that at one point was the father of small children and now has grandchildren that you're hanging out with a bunch, is loud noises sometimes a bit difficult for kids. It's why at sporting events we always see those big earmuffs. And it was Kids Day at the Kings and Hurricanes game on Saturday at crypto.com, Staples, whatever you want to call it. And I was there in a box with a bunch of families that had kids. There's probably between 12 and 15 kids, all under the age of 6, running around in this box doing their thing. And the first goal horn went off. And Dad, I said the only way I can describe it is it looked like the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan, where you look around and there's people covering their kids' ears. There's kids crying and rocking around in there because the sound surprised them and scared the hell out of them because only so many are actually paying attention to the game. And it was panic everywhere. The parents were stressed. The kids were stressed. And we're like, well, thank God this is a hockey game. And there's usually, only intermittent bouts of this. The Kings went on to win that game 7-9. And so 6 more times in that game, I saw parents just jumping from wherever they were at to go and cover their small children's ears because not enough people remembered to buy the headsets, and the kids were all freaking the hell out. So God bless parents who thought they were probably bringing their kids to a fun afternoon to watch some hockey and instead got assaulted by goals as the Kings went on an unholy terror.
Yeah, listen, I guess that's the thing because of loud noise. But the youngest you guys were that went to professional sports was when we were in Phoenix. And you guys probably in 95, 96. So you were 6, 7 years old. Jake was 5, 6 years old. Sydney was young. I don't think she came to the games. But we would take you guys to the Coyote games. That was really the only professional games that you guys went to. And yeah, those horns are loud, no doubt about it. But yeah, the bevy of earphones out now, or headphones to block the baby's ears, is truly amazing. But you did go on a run. You went from soccer to hockey to basketball, seeing the Clippers and Oklahoma City play. I was tired just listening to the times you were going out. I needed a nap.
Yeah, I went to the Clippers game. There was a group my buddy works with had like a fantasy day where they got to go and do some basketball drills and played some pickup. And I actually went and did that with them, Dad. My back had been messed up for a while. Shout out to Jen at Chest Fitness in El Segundo for healing your boy up, because went back out there and laced him up a little bit. Got out there, ran some pickup with the guys for about 15, 20 minutes playing a game in there. And no major injuries. I came out of that with my only goal being, let's get some rebounds and set a couple of screens, which your boy did. I think we notched 4 or 5 rebounds in the game. Missed a couple of point-blank layups, kind of the way that you did in the NBA All-Star Celebrity Game back in New Orleans, but managed to put one through the basket before the game was all said and done. And most importantly, did not injure anything that's going to require surgery for your boy here on out. So all in all, I consider that a win.
I'm impressed at 35 years old. You were at the Combine. You went through some Combine events. You're playing pickup basketball. Man, that's taking some chances is what that's doing with your body. And I'm glad you're okay as they flash in a picture of me playing in that celebrity basketball game of where I missed a 2-foot layup.
Well, Dad, but you can appreciate going through that game because wasn't it like the Secretary of Education that was in that game that apparently had a hoops background that was like balling, putting a lot of effort, like Kevin Hart level, trying to win the All-Star MVP effort into it, which makes that a really difficult thing to try and go through and not get hurt when you've got someone that's a wild card like that.
This was when I was in my big self, when I was in my fat self. I was dealing with plantar fasciitis in my foot. And I was so used to celebrity games being fun, right? And early in this game when I was in it, I was trying to have fun with the refs, and everybody was just kind of like playing serious. And I was like, uh-oh, I'm not a basketball player. I was a wrestler. I was not a basketball player, and I thought this is not going to end well. And then you're right. It was the Secretary of Education who was taller that I had to guard, who was playing to play for the MVP award and trying to get a tryout with an NBA team. I'm like, dude, go ahead. I mean, are you kidding me? I'm fat and injured. I have no business running out seriously on this court. And then my one chance to score 2 points and get in the box score, I just absolutely gacked it.
Did you feel any pressure? Because that was the advantage I had in doing this was I just immediately, whether it was on offense or defense, I found the guy that wanted to give the same level of effort. Like there was that immediate eye contact as we were matching up going down the court where it was the guy I knew that I was also going to be on the same page with where, hey, if it was a fast break going the other way, we're going to hang back and make sure that's a 4-on-4 and not feel like we need to get involved because there were no stakes, because there were no cameras and no people watching this in the All-Star game. I'd have to imagine there's kind of some pressure for you as a former athlete with all the eyes on this to maybe go out there and feel like your adrenaline all the starts getting going.
Well, I mean, the only pressure I had is I found out early in the game it was going to be a serious game and that we were going man-to-man, and I was the biggest one out there, and the Secretary of Education, I don't remember his name, was the biggest one out there, so I had to guard him. And this dude was throwing elbows. I mean, he really was looking for an NBA tryout. It was truly unbelievable. And so I missed my only shot. I was there when Greeny and I were doing Mike and Mike at ESPN. Greeny had one shot and he threw up an air ball. Those were our only shots of the game. That's why next year we were the coaches. I was the coach of one side and Greeny was the coach of the other side. They're like, okay, we've seen enough of these guys playing. Let's make them coaches. And that was the right move.
And you know what? No complaints from either of you guys, I'm sure, either. And that's fine. There is nothing wrong with getting to hold the clipboard and do what you do best, and that's just yap on the sideline. All for that. So you avoided major injury there. I avoided major injury and got to see a really good game. Like, Dad, I was stunned. As we know with this Clippers team, it's always been such a grab bag of who's going to be available for that squad. To see a game where you had James Harden and Kawhi Leonard both available going into that game, and the fact they were able to take Oklahoma City down to the wire. OKC gets the 103-101 win in that game and continues to put miles of distance record-wise between them and the rest of the Western Conference. But, Dad, it was that reminder that especially when Kawhi Leonard is available and on the court and working well, there were just certain possessions where on both ends of the court, he was suffocating. And it was such a reminder of, man, what the Clippers hoped they were going to get during this era and what's only been but so intermittently available to them.
And you have a battle for the sixth playoff spot, right? You have Golden State sitting in the sixth slot with an injured Steph Curry, who may be coming back against Miami, which has a story in and of itself with Jimmy Butler tomorrow. But you have Minnesota right outside. They're the first play-in team. They're only half game behind Golden State, and the Clippers are in the 8th slot. They're just a game behind Golden State. So those three teams, 6, 7, and 8, Golden State, Minnesota, and the Clippers, are fighting for that 6th spot to be actually in the playoffs and not have to be in the play-in.
Well, and I mean, really, you also look at Memphis is only a couple games ahead of Golden State. The Lakers, I've heard JJ Redick talk about, really their only goal as a team is to make sure they stay above that line because the extra week of rest that you'd get by being the 6th seed and not in the play-in tournament would be huge for a team that's been dealing with injury to LeBron James in Los Angeles. He comes back, in a loss to the Bulls and at the very least ends the game upright, and you're not worried about injury there. Probably not out of the woods yet, but that race to that race in the Western Conference to avoid the play-in tournament is going to be fascinating, Dad. And as you mentioned, it takes on an interesting tenor this week, as the Golden State Warriors are going to head to Miami. Now, we'll wait and see, like you said, if Steph Curry is actually going to play or not, makes the trip. But we know this is going to be about Jimmy Butler and the return back to a Miami team that really had a sour ending with it. And Jimmy Butler, in the way that he addressed this, downplayed it. He said when asked, I was traded from there, yada, yada, yada. It didn't end the way the people wanted to, yada, yada, yada. But that's so far behind me now, I don't even think about it. I don't pay attention to nothing except the trajectory of this squad. And then kind of went on to downplay his time in Miami a little bit, Dad. He said, we didn't win anything we were supposed to, so I don't know. We made some cool runs. We had some fun. I think that's all we did. And we know for the Heat, that's a franchise that's about hanging banners. Their even recent history is full of them. And so, yes, that era won't be remembered, but it will be interesting to see the reception he got based on the ending, because there's no doubt, Dad, when Jimmy Butler left and went down to Miami, a lot of us, myself included, sort of laughed at the situation and thought, hey, giving a team over to Jimmy Butler at this stage, what's it going to net you? And he dragged that roster kicking and screaming to a couple of big-time postseason runs that, yeah, didn't net a championship, but felt like they more than maxed out that roster. And he represented Heat culture so well in that stretch. He should be a celebrated player, but I'd have to imagine these are going to be heavy boo birds given the way that ended. Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that he wanted out. I mean, it was he wanted out. I mean, there are players that leave a team and it's not their choice that don't get booed, but he made a stink about wanting out. So while there may be some people that appreciate what he did in Miami, there will be more boos than cheers because of the way he wanted out. And Miami is just completely fallen apart. They're on a 10-game slide. They've been outscored by 125 points in the fourth quarter during their 4-17 without Jimmy Butler. And I mentioned getting outscored in the fourth quarter by 125 points, as Golden State is 16-4 with Butler. So Miami has certainly gone in the wrong direction. No doubt about that.
Yeah. Oh, it's been an abject disaster. I forget who it was. I think on the Gills Arena podcast that said the Jimmy Butler trade was worse than the Luka Doncic trade in terms of the impact. And while overall I disagree just because of where Luka is in his career, the slide for the Mavs after Dad at least could be attributed to injury. You know, you lost AD, who was supposed to be the all-pro you netted in that trade. Kyrie Irving gets injured shortly after. The whole roster was so badly beat up that Bobby Marks at ESPN was talking about the potential for them to have to forfeit games coming up because they wouldn't have enough guys available to them. For the Miami Heat, there's not that same excuse. They've just been flat out bad. And so for that team coming in, with everything you just mentioned, Dad, I cannot imagine what that locker room in Miami is going to be like in pregame and how badly they want to go out here and beat this dude, especially if Golden State's got no Steph Curry available in this game.
It's amazing. Right now, Miami is clearly in the play-in. They're 6 games ahead of Toronto, who's right on the outside looking in. So Miami is going to be in the play-in. They're going to be in the play-in playoffs. And the Mavericks, who basically are just looking to field enough players, they're basically tied with Phoenix for the 10th slot and the last play-in spot. So 2 teams that are just absolutely limping to the finish line will have a play-in probably loss to end their season.
We always talk about down the home stretch of any season, the team that nobody wants to play. And maybe the Clippers would be that team if they are healthy, if all those guys are available, and they're a team that makes it into the playoffs as a 6 seed, or even coming out of the play-in tournament. They could very easily be the team that nobody wants to play because they represent someone coming together at the right time who's got enough underlying talent that if they stay healthy could be dangerous. The 2 teams you just mentioned, Dad, the Miami Heat and the Dallas Mavericks, could be the total opposite. They're the team everyone probably wants to play. I'd imagine if you somehow could get a shot at either of those 2 in a postseason run, either in the play-in or otherwise, anyone would sign up to play them in their current form because Dad, sans Jimmy Butler, no matter how it ended, he was the only part of that Miami Heat team that people on the outside feared when it came to the postseason. You always worried about playoff Jimmy and that specter, and we understand Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, they're guys that have been very good players, but there's no one that fears the Miami Heat in that same way, sneaking into the dance the way that they used to when Jimmy Butler was there.
And interesting with Dallas, Anthony Davis is going to be coming back soon. Thought he would be done for the season. I thought, why put him back out there? Just let him get completely healthy for next year. But he's nearing a return to help Dallas possibly get into the play-ins.
Dallas needs something right now just to feel good. Like Anthony Davis, I want this for him. He was a guy that had his life upended in that trade as well. And for Dallas fans at large, they need a win right now in the worst way. Coming up next, though, they may not need this win as bad as Team USA. What to look forward to ahead of next year's World Cup. Next on Gojo and Golic. We used to do Who Won the Weekend. I forget, either at ESPN or here at DraftKings Network. But, Dad, the biggest winner on the weekend, and something that I'm sure will mean nothing to you and certain sections of our audience, but Saratoga water got to be seeing an absolute jump today. Dad, in the world of online influencers that would make your head want to explode, the internet got taken by storm by a former running back named Ashton Hall, who I believe played running back at Alcorn State and has since gone on to become one of these like grind set influencers that is jacked and shows off their routines. And his routine involved dunking his face in a bunch of water and wiping his face with a banana peel. The bottle of water that he put in that video was a brand Saratoga that has now seen a spike in sales because everyone, ironically, unironically, has been running out here now to purchase this water that could not have paid this man enough money for the publicity that they got, just blowing up the internet yesterday.
Okay, I'm not going to lie. I don't know what you said after wiping his face with a banana peel. What the hell is that?
Yeah. Dad, I am also searching for that, but as you guys can see right now watching on DKN, this very jacked man took you through his morning routine, and at one point, he stops to eat a little bit of breakfast after diving into a pool, which apparently took 4 minutes according to the timestamp, and eats a banana and then wipes his face with the peel. Now, I am waiting because I figured there had to be some sort of like beauty routine type thing where, oh yeah, there's certain like antioxidants in a banana peel that are actually good for your skin. I have not seen or heard that. So I'm like you, Dad, just very confused at who would look at a banana peel and go, yeah, I want to put that on my face.
So I'm watching this video and it's the dude basically getting dressed. These are videos people watch. The guy is basically getting dressed and then walking out a door. Why am I watching this? What I'm seeing him jump in a pool. So what? I mean, what the hell are we doing?
Well, Dad, so like this is the rub on the internet is guys like this that are, and you know, across the board, people that are jacked, handsome, hot, good looking, and appear successful. Like you put on a nice suit, you're talking in front of the microphone. Everybody who's sitting at home goes, well, I want to be like that. What do I have to do to get there? And so it's given way to this industry of, I think he's technically a life coach. I think that's how this has worked and spawned. And so people just essentially see a jacked, handsome person that looks successful and want to know what it takes to be them. And so you get all of these get ready with me videos or morning routine videos as people are obsessed with biohacking their lives. It's kind of become this whole, at least online enterprise that we see produce videos like this every once in a while that TikTok and these other apps eat up, and the minute they make it to Twitter, absolutely get roasted into the sun.
I mean, listen, if the guy's making money off it, more power to him. And I don't know what the hell people are thinking paying him, but you know, what do you, rubbing your, I know you did I saw you do the video where you stuck your face in cereal, and I didn't know it was an homage to this video. I just thought you had lost your ever-loving mind. I had no idea what you were doing, quite honestly. Zero idea.
Which I'd imagine is pretty often with the way I live my life, but I would love to have been in the room. So you had no idea the background of this,
no.
And you just saw your oldest son stick his face into a bowl of cereal and thought, oh, well, you know, it's just another day that ends in Y.
I'm used to seeing you doing food reviews in your car, which I think are very, very cool. You know, you're giving out information on a food. But then I saw you like getting ready in the morning or eating cereal and I'm like, what the hell is he doing? Why is he doing? And then, you know, your mother told me what you were doing. I was like, oh, but I still hadn't seen the video of the dude sticking his face in water. If anybody is wiping their face with a banana peel, because this guy is, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Okay. But I mean, we're just watching somebody get ready. We have to watch him put his shirt and his socks on. Like, that's going to change your life. Again, what the hell are we doing?
Look, you know what we're doing? We're getting to this money, and you and I are going to need jobs after Friday, and so if you want to continue to be able to afford my sister, I suggest you set up the tripod and start getting ready in the morning and showing people what it takes to be Mike Golic Sr., because we need this right now.
Let me just say, there is no way on God's green earth that I will ever be on TikTok doing a get ready or anything know-how video to do. Maybe I'll do one as being a grandfather. Maybe I'll do one as being pappy and playing with the grandkids. Now that's something I could get into.
You know what? It just made me pop into my head because I thought, you know what? There's no way my dad's ever going to be caught dead doing this. We would have said the same thing about the idea of Bill Belichick being on camera doing yoga poses with a 24-year-old. So, stranger thing, honestly, we are not far away from a Bill Belichick get ready with me. Like, I am not going to be surprised when the day comes where we see Bill and Jordan doing a get ready with me to go coach UNC against NC State in an ACC tilt.
Wow. That's what we need. Get ready like a 72-year-old. I mean,
I want to know what product Bill's using. What sort of makeup message with that skin tone? There's probably a lot of different tone in the skin at this point. He's 70-something.
Oh, my God. Just know I will never be doing a get ready video. That will not be happening.
By the way, we talked about Saratoga Water is the winner for the weekend. Loser of the weekend, U.S. men's soccer. Are you guys okay?
Oh,
I don't know what's going on here. And Dad, I mentioned I went to the semifinal of the CONCACAF Nations final on, I guess, Thursday of this last week. And it was the semifinal match where the U.S. lost in extra time to Panama, and it was a pretty big upset at that point. But then they had the third place match against Canada and lost that too, and seem to be in a bit of a spiral right now, Dad. And I remember being struck by it and kind of remembering as I'm there at SoFi where this game is happening. And to be clear, I watched the U.S. and Panama in the early game, and then the headliner, it was packed in there for Mexico against Canada. And watching the two games, the U.S. looked like, at best, the third best team there. Like, they controlled the pace of playing the ball a lot in Panama, and Panama just netted one. But watching Canada and Mexico after that, I was like, we don't move like these teams. We're not as good as these two teams. As we watched and assessed that, and the tournament results backed that up. And Dad, I was struck by the advertisements that I saw on the video board that were the reminder, 2026, we're hosting the World Cup. Like, everyone's going to come here. And I saw Taylor Twellman, our former teammate at ESPN, say yesterday, thankfully, there are 48 teams and automatic qualifiers for the 2026 World Cup host team, because I'm not sure that the U.S. men would qualify in the old format. And, Dad, based on what we saw, it was just lifeless. And we've heard so much about soccer building up in this country. Hell, you've been hearing it for 3 decades in doing this job and covering sports in this country. And it seems like we're as far away as ever right now in the lead up to what should be this crowning moment or potential breakthrough moment for our country.
And you're right. For 30 years of me doing this, we've been talking about when is the men's team going to get better, like the women's team and being number one in the world, and they haven't gotten close, and it seems like they're going in reverse. And you're right about the automatic bids because it's Canada, the U.S., and Mexico that are hosting, so the U.S. gets an automatic bid, but they may be done in the first round. The way they're playing, it is you keep trying to, and obviously it starts at the youth level. And when are we losing these great athletes out of soccer into other sports? That's obviously what's happening, and they're not getting the better athletes that are playing. So, and it seems to be going in reverse. I don't have the answer. Hell, we've had so many analysts on over the last 3 decades and talking about this, and they all give answers as to what needs to happen, and it just never seems to happen.
Taylor Twellman asked the question of how important is this to the players involved in their future success, to the manager involved? Like, how much of an impact will it have on their careers? And is that governing how much they're putting into this? I don't want to sit here and question the effort of guys that I don't know, but Taylor, as an alum of this program, as someone looking and going, how much does it actually matter to the bottom line of the people involved enough to move the needle forward on this before we invite everyone to our house and apparently potentially embarrass ourselves in front of company? I think that's the looming worry for a lot of people that have supported U.S. soccer as we lead up to the games next summer. All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you off into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review the show. Leave it a 5-star rating, and check us out live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the Gojo and Golic YouTube channel. Thank you to our guests that stopped by today, Jordan Cornette NBC Sports and Westwood One analysts covering March Madness, help us break down the men's bracket, and our buddy Marshall Newhouse stopping by for a Monday here to look at NFL free agency's results and kind of put an eye towards the draft. If you missed that, make sure you check it out wherever you get our podcast or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done. Dad, let's start off with this, that, and the third with a pretty heartwarming story out of the NBA. So Joe Ingles plays for the Timberwolves right now. Hasn't started a game in over 3 years as a guy who's always been a name people recognize around the NBA. Good shooter, but at this point in his career, not a guy you're trotting out there night in and night out. Joe Ingles has a son in Jacob who is autistic and for a long time had not been able to watch a full NBA game because of the sensory overload. And so had a big milestone for him in a game previously where he had finally been able to watch a whole game, but Joe Ingles didn't get any time in that game when he was able to watch. And so with Joe's family in attendance for the game, Chris Finch decided to make the decision to give Joe Ingles the start. Again, his first start in over 3 years as Joe's wife, Renee, and all 3 of his kids were in town for the game, and their son, Jacob, was able to watch and see his dad in an NBA uniform. And Chris Finch, after the game, got asked about this and talked about what went into the decision for this moment.
You know, sometimes you got to do the human thing. And we always talk about all these minutes matter, and those minutes matter for another reason. So, but someone put it in my head today, and as an idea to make sure that Joe can see the floor. And I figured if we're going to do it, let's do it in style. So, guys were behind it, and I think it gave us the right boost that we needed and change of energy. So,
wow.
Dad, it's nice to see that dose of perspective over the course of a long NBA season. And one more, to Chris Finch's point, the games matter, especially for this team, but this moment and what it provided for the Ingles family had to mean more than any of the rest of the wins this season.
That's just cool when you could put sports in perspective and kind of use it actually to kind of motivate, quite honestly, but using life as the motivation, as there are more things important than sports. You know, an autistic son seeing his father play. It's just a very cool moment, a very human moment, I guess would be the best way to describe it. That is very, very cool.
And Chris Finch mentioned discussing it with the rest of the team. I can't imagine how excited they were to see this for their teammate and his family. You hear so many guys talk about when their kids get old enough to kind of have the awareness of what they do for a living and to be able to share that. And for Joe and his family, where the road's just been different with their son because of his abilities, to now go out and have this moment at this point had to mean the world to them and the world to so many of his teammates. So congratulations to Joe, to Jacob, and the Ingles family on what had to be a stellar moment for that family. Dad, we'll move on to that and celebrate an incredible life in boxing. George Foreman unfortunately passed away over this weekend at the age of 76. The heavyweight legend who was a 2-time heavyweight champion, including being the oldest champion at the age of 45, had the famous Rumble in the Jungle with Muhammad Ali in 1974, was an Olympic gold medalist, and of course, the author of the George Foreman Grill, one of the most important technological innovations of my entire lifetime. So, Dad, someone whose boxing tenure obviously was so noteworthy in so many ways, but then the pop culture relevance because of this freaking grill made him a name that so many people continue to know well after he put the gloves away.
Oh, that's exactly right. And you mentioned a gold medal in the Olympics in 1968, Mexico City. His first professional fight was in April of 1975, and his last professional fight, he was 48 years old, was November 22nd, 1997. I mean, he won another heavyweight title when he was 45. Absolutely amazing. You mentioned the George Foreman Grill, but also go back to some of the shows when I was growing up, and people are going to be like, what are these shows? He made appearances on The $6 Million Man, Sanford and Son, Home Improvement, King of the Hill, The Masked Singer in 2022. He was on The Masked Singer just a couple of years ago.
Wow.
And he first appeared in The $6 Million Man in 1975. So he really sprinkled in television appearances as well as the George Foreman Grill, as well as his boxing career. So, Still 76, too young, but boy, a life well lived by George Foreman.
I tell you what, as a 20-something living on my own in Connecticut, where a lot of times in winter you didn't want to go back out and trudge through the snow on the deck to fire up the grill in the cold, having that George Foreman sitting in the cabinet ready to go for you, manna from heaven. I feel like the largely single young male population all owes George Foreman a debt of gratitude for what that grill did, knocking out the fat for so many of us for so many years.
And oh, by the way, I think he made $100 million on it, having his name attached to it. I mean,
yes,
but not too shabby, not too shabby at all.
I know there's a sea of celebrity branded like alcohols and products like that. I'd have to imagine, and at Gojo and Golic on Twitter, what is the most famous celebrity endorsed product? Like, is it this? Is it the George Foreman grill? Is there something obvious that I'm missing in terms of something a celebrity has attached their name to that's done this well? And again, maybe in the non-edible or drinkable division, since so many people seem to populate that space now because that's so easy to do in a partnership so many people go to. We'll see if anyone's got any answers, and we can revisit that tomorrow because I'd be very curious what that looks like. But, Dad, we'll finish it off in honor of March Madness with the third. So Warren Buffett at Berkshire Hathaway for years has run a contest with his company employees. Anyone at the company, the prize was $1 million every year for life for someone who accurately predicted the entire Sweet 16 in the men's college basketball tournament. In the 10 years of the pool, it had not happened. Now, there had been a consolation prize for $100,000 to the bracket that was perfect for the longest, so someone every year would win that. A lot of years they would have people split. But this year, Dad, Warren Buffett tweaked the rule in order to give someone a better chance. He said he'd give $1 million to anyone who correctly nails at least 30 of the first 32 games because, as he told the Wall Street Journal, I'm getting older, and I want to give away $1 million to somebody while I'm still around as chairman. He is 94 years old, and so the clock's certainly ticking there, but that is a wild rich person thing to say, and that being said, still a pretty high bar to clear. So, Warren, we're going to have to come down on this. Like, I want to know what the floor is going to be before Warren finally gets to give away this $1 million.
Well, I mean, you got to make it somewhat tough to win $1 million. And how about that? How many? Now, there's 395,000 employees in total in all the 60-plus subsidiary companies. Could you imagine having won that? And then in the 10 years, nobody did. But you'd get $1 million for life. But nobody got that. So he did lower it. You still have to make the bar somewhat, high. And 30 out of 32, it's not perfect, but it's close. But he did. I like the consolation prize of $100,000. So somebody is going to win the $100,000, or a couple of people to split it. But man, that $1 million still looming out there.
The crazy thing to me is, you mentioned it, 395,000 employees under the Berkshire Hathaway umbrella. How are there only 60 to 70,000 entries every year? How are we not at 90 to 100% in that? This is a lottery ticket that you don't have to purchase. You get to do this for free the way everyone else is doing it. You might already be filling out a bracket. I get sports is comparatively smaller, but we see people that know nothing about this tournament win all the time. And you got a dude offering you $1 million for every year the rest of your life, and all you got to do is fill out the bracket. I'd be sprinting to that bad boy. You'd be jamming as many as you in under fake names to try and win that if you were in the office pool at Berkshire.
Without a doubt. I mean, when it was $1 million a year for life to hit it perfect, I mean, I know, and obviously nobody cleared it. It's tough to do, but you only got a chance to win it if you're in it, right? So how can you not be in it?
Listen, you can't win if you don't play. So shame on y'all for turning down the easiest lottery ticket of all time at Berkshire. Unfortunately, we can't give you $1 million a year for life. Hopefully you can give us a subscription, a rating, or a review. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.